Sounds good. Alrighty, everybody. Then welcome to a quick walkthrough and demo of Waystones, our compensation management for bottom-up organizations. And with that, a couple words about myself. I'm the CEO of the Silver Logic. That's this company. We're a software engineering company, and this is something that we created about 8-9 years ago in our early days. And we finally put it into a software tool, but it also comes with a lot of the just sort of a philosophy that we do here. So our goal is to help guide members of organizations into making real decisions about how payment works. And this was really started where many years ago, as I said, like 8 or 9, in my early days of starting the company, there was this fun conversation that I kept having. And I think I'll give it a second. So in the very early days of being a founder, people would come to me with this very common issue, or employees would come to me and say, "Hey, David, do you have a moment?" And this was pre-COVID. So this was in a time where we were in the office. So they would seek me out in my office and talk to me and see if they can have a conversation. And usually I knew what the conversation topic was, and it wasn't a very fun one. It usually led to one of two topics, which was either, "Hey, David, can I have a raise?" Or, "Hey, I'm resigning, I'm leaving to go somewhere else," usually for one of the reasons being money. So it was not a really fun thing for me as early founder. And I didn't really enjoy either of those conversations because they're very confrontational, very awkward. And I figured there must be a better way to do this. And that's when our milestone system was born. Since we realized, look, at some point, every member of an organization is going to ask or want to think about more compensation. So instead of waiting for this weird top-down approach of, let me wait when they dare to ask for a raise, let's rather have an adult conversation about, look, I know at some point more compensation will be adequate for you. So let's align on what is that point in time, what is the deliverable, the merit that can be, that delivers more value to the company, that justifies having more compensation for this team member. And that's how the milestone system was born. So, and that's really how it then expanded into not only being that, how do we have that conversation, but what yielded from there is that, cool, so I know what I'm going to be paid. What do I need to achieve? What milestones, what levels, what aspects do I need to achieve in order to get increments in pay? And as a byproduct, this also made it very transparent, efficient, and fair because it is automatic. I could publicize all salaries in the organization, since now everybody is evaluated against the same criteria for what they need to do in a specific role. And this has made it that just sort of organically, all our compensation is very direct and fair. So with that, just a quick recap of different models on remuneration that we've had in the past, where people, we've come up with great ways to give money to people and to pay benefits to people or have benefits to people. But what is often not reflected in there is a way for them to grow. For what can I do in order to advance myself? And I'll walk quickly through in a second how the inspiration of how to do that, and then a quick demo of the tool. So as we were looking into that growth was one of the things. We did some research, saw that lack of career development and advancement and inadequate compensation were some of the top reasons to quit, which then led us to just building out this model more and more, where in Maslow's pyramid or in different models, we often have psychological and safety needs really well covered, but we don't have so much the top parts of the pyramid. Love and belonging is covered if you have a great culture, but the self-actualization part isn't covered very well in an organization, in most organizations, if growth isn't the focus point. So we came up with this definition of a milestone, which is something that's a measurable, self-guided, and independent piece of objectives and acceptance criteria that every member of the organization knows, is aware of, and can then achieve. And some of that also came in from our view on cross-functionality. We do a lot of, we manage with Agile Scrum, which is also where cross-functionality is a big focus point. So we wanted to allow people to be able to not only one-track mind, here's your job description, and this is what you need to learn, but what else can you learn to branch out a little bit? And taking this traditional ladder approach to more of a trellis, so that yes, you have maybe your job title, but this doesn't confine you to only learning things on one track, but you can grow a little over here and over there. So say, we employ a lot of software engineers, learning some design skills, some QA skills, some DevOps skills is highly encouraged and just makes the person a lot more cross-functional, a lot more flexible and valuable to the organization. So we wanted to turn this somewhat traditional model of just wait time, sit out and wait for a certain period of time, and you can ask for a raise or a promotion, to something that's a little more self-driven and self-organized, and also has a little bit of a touch of gamification, played enough video games to inspire some of these visuals, so that you can then see, here's my path, here's my journey, and where can I go and what can I evolve into. So now, since you guys are remote, either if you want to open a Google Doc or a piece of paper in whatever shape or form, I'm going to do the speed version of walking through how you can design one of these journeys. So you have a little bit of a takeaway out of this, and then we'll see, it will show how that can all look like using the tool that we've built. And just as context, this is something that we have initially, I designed all those first milestones, but over time, we have actually turned to decentralize it. And now all of these milestones, all of these objectives are not designed by, again, traditional like management or HR, but this is something that all members in the organization design. And for example, we just released a new DevOps milestone that was designed by DevOps members, but then feedback and input was given from different circles that have overlap and impact into what makes for a really good milestone on them. So it's highly encouraged and works really well if you just leverage that full brain power of the entire organization instead of limiting it to only specific circles. So for step one is the inspiration. If you can think of your organization, choose a role that either has the most members, so that we don't design just a really unique one. It's a lot harder as a practice one. Choose something where you have a lot of members or a low retention rate, because that makes more urgency to design. So think for a second for what is that role, be it like for us initially, it was software engineers. In your, it might be a call center rep, it might be someone else. So with that in mind, choose that role, think of whatever that role is, and now pick, say, 3 most valuable members in that role. So just, I don't say just one because everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. Pick 3 people in that role, note down their names, and now do just a quick brain dump of what makes them valuable. What are their traits? What are their soft skills, technical skills, any other skills, anything that you think makes them really valuable to your team, to the organization, to then see what is it that is. So we can then now, over the next few steps, we will model a path towards that. And once you have that, I'll show a quick example of what that is in the QA role, for example, here. And we just noted down some of those steps of what are good traits. And I'm going to go really fast to the next ones just so we can get it into this 15-minute segment where the QA, for example, if she's a good QA and can catch bugs before we release to production. We then, in step 2, we group some of them into certain categories that they belong together. And this is just really to help everybody keep that. So in your paper, you could circle and put triangles, put some organization, and then give them a title. So for example, knowledge is where we put that she's a good QA and can catch bugs. After that, we model them out, meaning we turn the little descriptions into traits. What skills or knowledge does that person need to obtain in order to advance there? And in order to get there, because it's great to tell me, hey, you need to be a good QA, but that doesn't really help me. It doesn't help me get there if I'm in that role. So we want to define the attributes that now make it that I can achieve that. What does it mean to be a good QA? So we'll go into that example again. And so from she's a good QA, with some brainstorming with different members in the organization, you can get to what would that mean? What does that entail to be a good QA? What's the meaning for us? Because that, depending on the person, can be vastly different in what the role is, what your organization needs. And then you go through and make that from sort of a, not every of those traits is necessarily something that a beginner needs to know. But now you want to categorize and make it a path of what's a beginner level, intermediate, later stage. We just give them numbers. We say level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that you can then see, okay, let's categorize these on what's a basic and immediate pro. And once you have that, you look at each one of them and look how to make them measurable, where for the measurability, I exclude the T of SMART goals because I don't want something time bound. I don't want to just have someone achieve a goal by sitting around or being in a role, but rather put it in their hands. Some of our team members achieved milestones within a few months. Some achieve 1 per year, some achieve 4 per year. And there's no real limitation. It is really now put into everybody's hands to collaboratively come up with these and achieve them. So there, as an example of measurability, what does, like, knowing the overall flow, how can I validate and measure it? So that, again, these validations don't need to be done top down, but by peers can validate them and thereby make it that everybody knows and sees, okay, yes, this has been validated, this is good, and I can advance onto this next milestone. And with that, I'm going to turn over, before we're out of time, to a quick demo here where I think I chose to share the entire screen. Yeah, desktop 2, I think you guys can see the full screen. So this is the tool Waystones, where the steps we just walked through, what your end result will come out to be is that you have these nice levels where you can see any of the prerequisites of how these tie together. And for nice context, we chose to set this up for the Sociocracy, for all the facilitator, practitioner, and trainer journeys, to see those where you can now, you have the different guideposts of what is it that you need to do in order to show that you've completed this, where now team members can comment on this, leave history of, yes, the person has shown this by doing XYZ, so that it facilitates peer review within the team. It also can just help manage the expectations of what means completion and when someone gets to there, as well as from a workspace perspective, makes it really easy. I have these journeys here. I can go into any of them, and it's very easy to just add more of these waystones or milestones in order to complete them, configuring them, And if I go and view then one of my teams, it was the free and open source, for example, and this was one of the visuals I was showing, where now you can also see who in my team has completed which of these milestones, who is in progress on one of them, as well as for any of the future levels, so that I see how's my team doing. And by tagging all of these learning milestones, you can also see how balanced is the team, how are they doing in different categories, so that weak points are much more easily identified and encouraged to say, oh, hey, in this team really needs to step out their decision making, and who in the team would like to invest more into learning and advancing on that track versus other tracks. And with that, I think, Ted, I had my 15 minutes, and the rest turn over to questions, or I can continue explaining some more of the aspects.
Thank you so much. I'm curious whether other people have questions. I would love to know how much, in your case, for your use, how much difference. So this is, yeah, how much difference does it make in compensation? And how, yeah, I guess just that link a little bit more.
Yeah, so for us, it's depending on region. We define 3 sort of global regions to adjust for cost of living. It's a $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 increment for each of the milestones. And that's an equivalent. So the person in different regions for the same milestone, they receive $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 as increment. And that makes it, so the US, for example, is the $5,000 increment. And so on, if I look on my profile, it's not set up here, but
but just
here,
not for your role. You have to pick another different person.
oh, okay.
So pick Nathalie or something. Somebody with an avatar. There we go.
You know, there we go. So here, for example, here we set up $100 increments, that their base salary is $5,000 and $100 increments for everything that's completed. The increments are configurable. The base salaries are configurable depending on the role, so that, like, for us, it's $5,000, but you can make really small milestones so that it could be $100 for each of the milestones. You also can size them differently if you wanted to. But that makes it so that someone can see this sort of roadmap ahead of them. And if they say, oh, no, the next one that I want to do is this T3, they can say, okay, this is my next up. And it will now, on this person, will now be one of their next up milestones after what they're almost there completing. So that's entirely drivable by, we try to make them all uniform, so I don't need to worry about, is this how big or small is it? Uniform size is our recommendation, and rather it will by natural selection. So some of them, those organically, will be picked up first that are easier, and leave some of the harder ones for later, but that keeps up the challenge for some of those folks that have completed more of them already.
I'm not officially the facilitator here, so please just raise your hand.
I've got a question. So this is Jerry. So we in SOFA we're starting to explore something that looks a bit like what you're laying out here. And then one question is, like let's say we have a $400,000 maximum of payroll that we can do, because otherwise we would be in the negative. Like, what do you do with, we made less money, we made more money? How do you then, we were trying to think of a coefficient kind of that brings everybody's salaries down or brings everybody's salaries up according to how well we're doing. And maybe you called it profit share, but have you thought about that?
Yes. In our case, we handle that. There's the base salary that's through these skills and milestones, And then the profit share is the portion that goes up and down. That might be one quarter, it might be zero. And another quarter, it might be an extra $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, or $500. That highly depends on how the quarter went. And then that's the extra compensation for the person. What I underscored here is really by the person becoming more valuable, by learning these skills and having higher value to the organization, is how I justify their higher base compensation. So if someone keeps learning and leveling up, I can now either that person has, because on our version, like on the software engineering milestones that we have, I'll pick myself here.
Yeah, let's share everybody's pay on the recorded Zoom.
Oh, I know. That's the
Oh, poor Gotti.
yep.
I
So
can recording, since we're only technically going to do the first part anyway. Do you want me to pause?
doesn't matter. It's
Actually,
fine.
Gotti's been in so many demos.
Yeah. He's my demo person. He's a real person, not a demo person. So what I've here is that, like, we see clearly, like, what are my different requirements, like all of this is drawn together. But now, because I have certain requirements and like we do everything in story points, I have how many points he has to do, how many complex stories he has to have done. This makes it for me that I know he can deliver more value over a time span, so that it is fine from a business perspective. He will give me an increment in what that value is that's produced that will allow for his increment in compensation, so that I know, okay, like for me, it justifies making it that instead of my payroll being 400,000, it can be 405,000.
And I also add from the team point of view, but like, what is profit, right? If you're paying a member of the team more money, that means that it's harder to get more profit. So when the team puts these together, like, what's the incentive for not just making everything very easy? It's because if everybody gets paid too much, then the whole thing just falls apart, because there's just not enough money. So at the very least, they have to think, by paying coworker X more money, will that really make everyone rise up, because we'll be making more profit as a team? So that's the other way to balance it out. It makes getting the profit harder.
Yeah, and some of them are new skills, so that now this team can maybe, like in my case, we have 8 Scrum teams. They can now offer or take on projects that require AR or machine learning, so that it's also driven by what can we do as a team in order to get new clients, get different type of clients, get new projects that are interesting, and that can justify, again, the more money. It's a tricky question, Jerry, and it is asked very frequently. If there's other limitations, then it can also be on a sort of first come, first serve basis of whoever completes, that there's just a limit of how many milestones can be completed per year. That also incentivizes then everybody to complete them sooner and not wait for later in the year possibly in order to accomplish them. Rhonda or Alessandro, any questions? So, I mean, one of the 2 things that I wanted to skip before, so we don't run out of time, it was that we then also have, so we have monthly check-ins where for us, because we use also Scrum, we have a Scrum Master that just checks in with the team members, but it could be any peer, that there is a recurring check-in of peers where you can see, okay, how are you doing with those milestones? Are you progressing? Are you missing something? Is there something where you need help with, or that you need to sign up for a course? Do you need any other resources? And that also helps to keep on track. So we don't wait for an annual performance review, which everybody, like, if you have an annual performance review in November, you don't know what someone did in January and February, even if it's well documented. It's much harder. So by having monthly check-ins, it allows for that higher frequency. And then a fun one that I've also incorporated it into is into hiring and offers, so that when we hire someone new in the last interview, we walk them through all of the milestones and they let the person self-evaluate into what do you think you either already embody right now, which skills do you check mark, or if there's little things missing, what could you show that within the first 3 months, you're confident that you could show to your peers that you have fully completed. And that has worked really well, so that it's not a number I make up, not a number the individual makes up for compensation, but it's a collaborative self-assessment where people are really honest about it and also accepting, because if they understand this is how everybody is paid, it makes for tremendous amounts of fairness and transparency between everybody. So it's not just because market conditions this month are slightly different, you suddenly get $10,000 more in pay versus someone that was hired half a year ago, which is I never felt right doing making those decisions, because then how can I look at those two team members in the organization and feel fair about making their payments if I feel they do the same things and have the same skills? This has made it so that these offers can be made also very transparently. And we put together a promo code for SOFA if anybody here wants to sign up to Waystones. It's waystones.io. You can scan that code from your screen, or just go to waystones.io, and we'll give 6 months free if you use the SOFA promo code.
And if you leave, you get to keep your data. We'll email it to you.
Exactly. There we have export features. If you decide after 6 months, no, you don't entirely love it, we'll guide you how to offboard, send you your data, or you just export it. Awesome. Any other questions? This was, I think, Ted, this was also your first demo of this?
Yes, it was. Yes, I'm very, very glad I saw it. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's why, I mean, for you, it was also, I mean, you see the special version of the demo of, in the context of your own trainings.
Yes. Neat feature. I'm hosting the next session, so I will hop to open it a minute early, but this was awesome. Thank you.
Sounds good. Pleasure meeting you. All right. Anybody else? Any questions? Feel free to reach out. This is my passion project. So I really want to disrupt with this how we deal with compensation.
Yeah. Quick question. Did you, you might have said this and I might have just missed it now. The peer, like some skills are like easy to define. Some skills are harder, like how well do you communicate, or how easy it is to work with you, like those kinds of things that are harder to measure, or that may have variation in how peers think of it.
Yeah,
I think you're probably...
that's where we try to go into this, the measurable steps, where we go and in each of those attributes, we look to find 1 or 2 measurables. So for example, collect data from different tools. We have Sentry to measure that. We have Jira to have it in there.
Yeah.
We know those are all the easier measurable ones. And then we do peer reviews for something like communication. The team votes on and gives it in our 360 reviews, gives input on how the person is doing.
So I think there's also the tangential one, because let's say there's a role that has a lot of care work, for example. So not really how well do you communicate, because everybody could have a bad day. And that also happens to be the day of peer review day. And everyone's like, this is terrible communication skills. But if there's somebody whose role it is to take care of the team and make sure that they're doing fine, that they're getting checked in on, like in our case, a Scrum Master, then like how do you even begin to quantify that? So for roles like that, or the ones that write the work items, then their measurables are more measured on the success of the team. Like by you putting in all this like emotional and mental time into helping other people achieve their goals, did the team achieve its bigger goal, like, you know, like its aim or whatever it is that the team's goals are. So that's how we work around it. But I agree, it's those are the more challenging ones. Like if your job is producing widgets and you have terrible communication skills, as long as you're not like a bad person, like as long as you're tolerable, just produce those widgets. Like nobody says you have to have a great personality. But for the other more care type things or ones that are less, you know, widgety, it gets a lot more challenging.
Do you have a straight line? I'm just thinking about the increments. Is it generally you hold a kind of like a straight line of increase, or is there an exponential, or does it curve out a bit? You know, like
No,
how far can you just keep growing, and if you're really at the top, do you get even more? You know, like, yeah, you understand my question? Yeah.
Yep. So we actually made it that for in the US, it's it's a straight line. It's $5,200 at every level, like no matter what. And it sort of normalizes because there aren't like there's just harder milestones that then people, for an early person it would be really hard, but someone that's farther along on their journey, they are easier to complete and they're now doable. And we haven't set a cap. So we just every quarter we review the milestones, and there's new ones every year that we design based on our current state of the company. We might come up with what are new milestones that we deem necessary or usable in the future. Like we wanted to adopt more infrastructure and architecture as well as security operations. So we may design new milestones for those. So people that are already at the top could now achieve those. So that something else regrows as people would top out usually. So we come up with what are either skills, what are skills and traits that make those people special and that we want to reproduce so that they might be already in that next level, but by identifying them and by asking them to help identify what makes them so much stronger than others in their team, having them help gives them a lot more ownership into defining that and now making a path so others can be elevated in that position. And then others are just new services or new skills that we discover or that come up as technology evolves. And then on the other side, for remotes, we made it that they start on their pay scale, and every 10 levels, they upgrade one pay scale, which then gives them, obviously, for that, if you go from level 9 to 10 and 19 to 20, it gives a larger jump in pay just because you're switching pay scales. Since my theory was that once you're senior enough that you're above level 10, it doesn't matter really where you are in the world. You're valuable enough that you can probably find employment anywhere. So I figured I'll pay you as if you are anywhere. And
yeah,
that's
the market coming in to tell us what to do.
Yeah, that makes it that like the scaling, like it goes like that and then it goes like this on those. Or if you're in Southeast Asia, it goes like that, and like that in as you evolve and level up. And that's more that, yeah, was an adjustment that we, funny enough, made right before COVID. And then it was really helpful during COVID because the market went crazy, but people had that outlook into, cool, this is how I can stay in the organization. I love the culture here, and this is how I can make money while not losing my circle of friends and co-workers that I really enjoy working with.